How's it, guys? Welcome back to the channel. It's me, the South African Wanderer, aka Pranesh Lakan, and I've just got back from a quick trip into the Kruger. So being the winter season, everything's dry and dusty in the Kruger, especially up north where we went to visit. So we were at the Makuleki concession, which you enter Pafuri Gate to get to. We actually parked the car at Pafuri Gate and were picked up and taken through to the eco training camp that we stayed at for, I think it was 3 nights. And we were doing some birding, mostly because the larger animals up in the north of the park are very scarce. I think we only got some elephants on a few of the days. But that content is still to come, so watch out for it. However, I just wanted to jump on while it was still fresh in my mind and give you all a quick tutorial on the sensors of these mirrorless bodies that we use and how they are actually very prone to sucking in dust. So one of the big issues early on in the development of these mirrorless cameras, especially from Sony, who were leading the race to develop the mirrorless cameras, is that a lot of the mirrorless cameras, because they don't have the mirror and they don't actually drop the shutter in front of the sensor, what happens was when you out shooting, especially in dry and dusty areas such as the Kruger where we've been, or if you go down to the beach and it's windy and there's dust in the air, what tended to happen is that the sensors would pick up a lot of dust. So I had already been noticing a spot on my images, I think on some photos in particular, especially where you've got a almost monochrome background and it's quite clean, the spot would show up. So I've got a couple examples where that was already showing up. But if you just want to check how clean your sensor is, I think the best thing to do is take a shot of the blue sky or the blue in the sky, and you'll very quickly pick up the spots where your sensor has collected some dust. So on the A1, it's not as bad for several reasons, and I'll get into that as we go through the video. But on some of the other cameras, such as my A7 III, for instance, if I spent any amount of time in the bush, that sensor would pick up dust almost quite vigorously, if I can say that. The Sony is better sealed, so it's water sealed and dust sealed, so there's less dust that gets into it to start with. And then it also has the shutter that comes down in front of the sensor that then almost closes the sensor off to any dust in the field. So I think the first step, if you're trying to minimize dust on your mirrorless sensor, is to go into your menu, and depending on your camera, the menus will be different. But go into your menu, and then I think on the A1, it's into the setup function, and in the setup function, I think it's setup options, and then anti-dust. And then on the anti-dust function, you'll see that there's sensor cleaning and then shutter when power off. So whenever I switch the camera off, the shutter will close and cover the sensor. So that's one advantage of the A1. I'm not too sure that all of the Sony camera bodies do that, or which of the Sony camera bodies actually allow that. Then what we tend to do in the field a lot is switch lenses. So I've got my 200, 600 on my camera body, and one of the lenses we use quite often out in the field, or one of the switches we do, is putting on a wide angle. So the first thing you need to do is be ready. So don't take the camera body off the lens that you have on, because then the sensor is probably going to be exposed to the air, and then dust is bound to get in. So get your second lens ready, get the camera body lined up, loosen the cap on the lens, and then what you want to do is take your camera body off the lens that you have, switch the lens cap over, and then line the lens up and make sure that it's locked in. So you would have seen that while doing that, I keep the camera body pointing downwards, because there is an opening where the lens obviously mounts, and if you have that body upwards and you're putting in the lens while that is open, there's more chance of dust and dirt getting into your sensor. So keep the lens facing downwards at all time. Obviously, while I've been doing this, the camera has been off. Like I said, my shutter comes down in front of the sensor and protects the sensor, so that's a plus. But having the camera off also shuts off the electricity into the sensor. And one thing that I learned back in my DSLR days already was that if you've got the camera on and you're changing the lens, that electricity flowing through the image sensor and through the components in your camera can cause static on the image sensor surface, and then the image sensor almost becomes a magnet, pulling in dust, which is then oppositely charged compared to the static. So make sure that the camera is off as well. And then you've done your lens change and you're ready to shoot again. Then if you do the test and you pick up that you have dust in your sensor, the thing you want to do is try to dislodge that dust in your sensor. So the first thing you can do is go into menu, again, the setup function, anti-dust function, and then go into your sensor cleaning. I think on the A1, you'll first need to switch off the shutter on power off, so that then the shutter is lifted, and then you go into sensor cleaning, and then your camera will do a sensor cleaning by vibrating the sensor, and in that way trying to dislodge any dust or any dirt that's on the sensor and settled on the sensor. If that doesn't work, then you got a second option, which is to remove the lens from the camera body, and then you'll need one of these air blowers. So these suck in air from the back and then blow it out through the front. So it's not sucking the air back through the front, which is problematic. And what you want to do, obviously my sensor is protected by the shutter, but what you want to do is blow that into that hole, keeping the camera facing downwards all the time, so that any dust that may be in there can maybe be dislodged and fall out. So we're just going to leave the camera body on the table. This is something that I wouldn't normally do. But what you also want to do while you have the blower out is blow your lens and make sure that any dust coming off also falls downwards. So that's one thing you need to do every now and again, either when you see the spots picking up or just as part of your routine. You can do it every month, once a month or something like that. Just make sure you don't push this too far up and hit your sensor. that's going to cause damage. And also, even if you've got your shutter, they say do not touch your shutter. So do not push it too far up, where it's going to actually impact on the sensor or the shutter. So if all else fails and you've got very stubborn dirt, sometimes you get oil particles or moisture particles that get onto the sensor and are very hard to dislodge with this air blower or with a sensor cleaning. What you then need to do is take it in to your local service center and have them clean the lens. There are videos that will help you clean your lens yourself, but given the price of your camera and given that you're going to be doing something that you could cause damage with, I would suggest not doing it yourself. For me, my local center is the Grey Owl Center, where Sony actually distributes their cameras from, and it's a quick 40-minute drive in, an hour for the cleaning, and I take both my cameras while I'm there, and they clean them concurrently, and then it's 40 minutes back. So it's about 2.5 hours and it's done, and you don't have to worry about it causing any damage or anything like that. So I would always suggest use the technicians for whichever brand you are using. I know that premium distributors out in the Grey Owl would be for both Sony and Nikon, and then for Canon you'll have to go to, I think it's Camera Tech in Randburg. So you can go through and check the camera in and let them clean and service that for you. So yeah, that's a few tips on actually taking care of your sensor and making sure that there's no dust that ends up on your sensor, and making sure that the images you're getting are the best that you can get. I've also had issues where in normal shutter speed range the dust doesn't show up, but if I'm doing, for instance, video or long exposure, then you'll see it's very dirty, and dust on the sensor in video is particularly hard to get rid of. I've had several videos where I've had to get rid of dust, and it's time consuming effort that goes into it. Photos, not so much, unless of course the dust is impacting on where your subject matter is in the photo, and then it can become an issue. Otherwise, it's just a simple spot healing, and the dust spot is generally out. Watch out for the new Kruger content that's going to follow. Hopefully we're going to get that up soon. I just sat down, downloaded all the images and videos off the memory cards. So it was about 350 gigs that I need to go through and sort and edit. But those videos will follow shortly. We had a really good trip out in the Kruger, so watch out for that. With I think the first video being our stop in Toyandu, birding with Samson again. We'll catch you on the next video, and hopefully this video helps you to keep your sensors clean.